Texas Card House, Houston. Early going here, just about to get into some poker games. They have Pot Limit Omaha and No Limit Texas Hold'em running today, this afternoon. It's still early. It's only maybe 3 o'clock right now in the afternoon on a Saturday, but 3 o'clock nonetheless, still pretty early. So I don't know what I'm gonna play. Could be PLO first and then No Limit, or vice versa. I think PLO first, maybe No Limit first. Maybe you'll just find out right now as we dive into some poker. Oh, and by the way, if you want to warm up into the vlog rather than just dive right in like this, consider checking out my second YouTube channel, Andrew Neeme 2, where I had a nice little chat with Brad Owen at a beer bar last night in downtown Houston. Check that one out and then come right back, or just stick around here and dive right into the poker. The choice is yours. There's going to be No Limit Texas Hold'em and Pot Limit Omaha on the menu today. We're in for $1,000 and starting with the 4-card game. In this hand, there's about 78 limpers or so, which turns out is pretty standard for these PLO hands. I have an ugly King 753 rainbow in the big blind and check it. Flop comes Ace 6-4 with 2 hearts, which, considering how terrible this starting hand is actually going to give us some options. I check it, and there's a bet of $15 and a call. With a wrap and the King of Hearts, I think we can call here. Remember, you can only use 3 cards on the board, so we don't have a backdoor flush draw, but we do have the ability to bluff hearts and represent the nut flush. 4 of us see a turn card. The 8 of Hearts makes things interesting. We make the nut straight, but are losing to all flushes, and since we have that key card, I think we want to start betting to put weaker flushes in a tough spot. I lead out for $55. One player calls and the other 2 fold. The 2 of us see a brick on the river, and it's time to apply maximum pressure.
Bet the pot.
215.
It's the same bet size that I'd use with an actual nut flush when going for max value, so that we have this bluff in our arsenal too. After thinking for a little while, our opponent folds. One full orbit later, there's another massively multi-way limped pot, and with us in the big blind again, looking at another ugly starting hand, the Queen 9-6 deuce with 3 spades, we check. I'm starting to think that I'm pretty good in these limped pots. This time, we flop a full house. There's an early position lead for $15, and aside from a king or an ace, there's no bad cards for us, and not wanting to tip our hand to so many players, I just flat call. There's one more call behind me, and we go 3 ways to a turn card. The offsuit 3 on the turn changes nothing, but this time the early position player checks. I bet $40. The player on my left calls, and the player on my right does not call.
Raised to 125.
He check raises to 125, and it's music to my ears. There's no reason to do anything other than just call here, being in position and not wanting to push the other player out of the pot. That player gets out of the way anyway, and we go heads up to a river. The front door flush arrives with the Jack of Hearts, and we should still expect to have the best hand here almost always. My opponent doesn't know that, though.
All in.
Oh, shit. Oh, I can't bluff him. Oh, I did.
This is full of friends.
Oh, good.
My opponent shows a deuce as well as 2 hearts, but in this game, trips plus a flush still loses to a boat. All right, as if there isn't enough action in single board PLO, there's double board PLO bomb pots mixed into these games too. Here at the Texas Card House in Houston, everyone puts in $10, then gets their 4 cards, and we play 2 boards simultaneously. Half the pot goes to the winner of each board. Win both, or everyone else folds, and you get the whole pot. We flop well on these 2 flops. Top pair on one, and a set of 3s on the other, blocking top set. There's a bet of $40 and a call, and I think we want to juice it up here. We could be losing to a bigger set or even 2 pair on one board, but it's unlikely we're behind on both boards. I make it $250. The first player thinks for a decent while before calling, and the other player gets out of the way. Heads up to the turns, where we make 3s full of queens and just have the 1 pair on the other board, which gets more connected. My opponent is first to act, and he decides he likes what he sees, and he bets the rest of his stack, which is about $500. We aren't going anywhere. right, let's see. The rivers get dealt, and my opponent announces that he has a straight and trips. We can beat trips, but...
Oh, you got Queen A on the top there.
Queen A. That's gonna scoop. Not bad. That's gonna scoop.
My opponent tables his hand, and the dealer sees that he actually has Queen 10, 9, 8. My opponent did not realize that he actually made a full house that's better than ours, which means we're going to end up getting scooped in this one. Disaster.
It's like a favorite.
505.
All right, moving away from the PLO madness and into the 2-card game. In this hand, we open Ace-5 suited for $15 and quickly get 3-bet by a player 2 spots over. 2 tilted to fold a suited ace. I make the call for $35 more, and we go heads up to a flop. It comes down 10-6-5 with 2 clubs, giving us bottom pair here. I check, and my opponent bets $75. 2 tilted to fold bottom pair. I make the call. The turn is a 7 of clubs, which nobody asked for, honestly. Not even my opponent, who checks it back this time. The river puts 4 to a straight on board, and I'm hoping to get to showdown here versus an ace-king type hand. I check it, and my opponent obliges. We show it down and find a win this time when my opponent mucks.
I didn't see the
In this hand, there's a $6 straddle on, and we have ourselves another suited wheel ace, this time of the deuce variety. I make it $20 to go, and we see 2 calls. 3 ways to a flop, which gives us the nut flush draw on 8, 7, 6 with 2 diamonds. These flops obviously not the best for the pre-flop raiser's range, so after the first player checks, I decide to check it, and the last player bets $45. First player folds, and I make the call. The turn upgrades us to top pair, and I check it again. This time my opponent checks it back. The river is a pretty looking jack of diamonds, giving us the nuts. And I think when you have a good hand in Texas, it's often a good idea to bet it. I bet $140. My opponent thinks for a long time.
I don't know what I'm beating.
After yet another 30 seconds of thinking,
Call.
Hey, nice, dude. I'm in there like swimwear, baby. That'll make it right. Maybe.
Probably
Omaha.
be in there.
Never know.
What card?
So a lot of days left.
It could get all in like 6 times between now and the end of the night. That won't make the cut.
all right, before leaving this table, we have a PLO hand, which happens once in orbit in these games. It's another massively multi-way limp fest before a raise to $15 and everyone calls. So it's a party heading to a flop of Queen 8-3 with 2 diamonds, giving us middle set here. There's an early position lead and a call before it gets to us, and I'm still in the mood to play for stacks. We bump it up to $250. The action folds back to the initial raiser, who sticks it in for $330.
Players all in.
Which sends the player into the middle, well into the tank. Well into the tank.
This guy's deep in the tank over here. What's he gonna do? What's he gonna do?
Eventually, he lets it go, saying he had a flush draw plus gutter ball, and we make the call for $80 more. I show my hand, and my opponent asks if we want to go twice.
It's up to you. You can go twice if you want. Sure.
I say sure, and we're off to 2 boards versus top 2 pair. The player who folded would have made a flush on the first run out, and he's none too pleased, of course. But we got the winning hand, and we're scooping it in.
And then leaves.
Oh my god. Hey, but you allowed me to add on the mustache. Jesus. Did you get flush twice? Yeah.
Nice hand, sir.
New table now, and back to Hold'em. And in this hand, we raise the Queen 10 offsuit to 20 in the cutoff over a straddle. The button and the straddler make the call. So 3 ways to a flop of 9-8-7 rainbow. I'm happy to c-bet this one with good equity and no showdown value, and a potential cooler if we happen to make the nut straight. The first player checks, and I c-bet for 40 bucks. Only the straddler makes the call. We go heads up to the turn, which gives us the 10 high straight. After my opponent checks it, I make a small wager of $50, and my opponent doesn't think for too long before making the call. Off to a river, which is a super favorable jack, giving us the queen high straight. After my opponent checks, it's time to ramp it up for value since he can never fold a 10. I bet $250 here, which my opponent snap calls.
Whoa!
Yep.
John 8, 1
Now I wish I had gone a little bigger at least, but my opponent shows a 5 for the low end of the straight. So who's to say what would have happened had we gotten too greedy here?
James 8, by
In this hand, we find the second best hand ever created, Pocket Kings. Raise it up to $30 over straddle and a limper and get 4 callers. The flop comes out 9-6-3 with 2 diamonds. The early position player leads out into the field for $45 and I flat call. I think this is probably a mistake since it allows all sorts of hands to continue and improve. I think there's merit to it since it's so multi-way and just one pair, but I think on a more connected board, like when there's a straight possible, it would probably make more sense. Back to the hand, and we see a check raise to $165 out of the small blind. The early position player calls, and I don't think we can fold since he can do this with worse hands for value. I call, and we go 3 ways to a turn. It's another diamond, which adds another hand class that we lose to. Both players check this time, and I check it back. The river's an offsuit 4, and the small blind leads out for $300. Early position player folds, and I think we have an easy fold here since he would have to turn a hand into a bluff versus 2 players that could easily have strong hands. Just not really in love with the way I played that one. Before departing this table, I made a suspect call of a 3-bet with this hand, but it was only $90 over a $35 open and a $10 straddle, and I'm a sucker for a good price. We whiff the flop and burn the 90 bucks.
Let it be, and it'll be what it'll be.
All right, over to the final table of the evening, which is a round of each game, which rotates back and forth between a round of pot limit Omaha and a round of no limit. In this straddled PLO hand, we raised the ace jack 5-5 with nut hearts to $20 before the player on my direct left immediately makes it $70. There's a cold caller, and it's back to us, and we're happy to call here. The flop comes ace 4-3 with 2 hearts, giving us a couple of options here. We decide to check it to the 3-better, who continues for pot, which is $215. First player folds, and we can either raise with our straight blockers and nut flush draw, or flat to keep him wide. I'd later learn that this player plays in some of the biggest games in all of Texas, which would explain his 99% VPIP here in our 1-3 game. So I decide to flat call. The turn is an offsuit deuce, giving us the wheel, and I decide to lead out for value here. I bet $325, but not really fearing any cards. In hindsight, I think a check might be better. As played, our opponent folds, and we drag it in. Back to no limit hold'em now once again, and looking down at a premium one. We raise pocket queens up to $25 over a straddle and a limp. The player on my left calls before a player in the blinds 3-bets to $125, and it folds back to us.
What you playing over there?
Our man is looking for action. And we have just the hand to provide him with it.
I got the ladies.
You got the ladies?
The ladies.
Well, I got the snowman.
Okay. Trying to get a good thumbnail here.
Ladies, I have the snowman.
King? Oh, queen.
You want to do anything special?
It's up to you. Whatever you want.
You want to run the turn and flop 2 lines?
You pick. Whatever you want to do.
Don't do that. Give me a chance.
So what is it?
2 turns, 2 rivers.
Oh, okay. My man wants 1 flop and then 2 turns and rivers. It's my first time doing it this way, but when you're a guest in someone else's house, you play by their rules.
You got me both times then. And you gave me a chance, so I can take it.
Sure. The boards run out clean for the queens, and we're dragging it in. We were up, and then we were down, and then we were up, and then I think we were even, and we finished up. Got into these games, these no limit games, these PLO games, these round of each games for $2,000 even. Cash out of the game for $3,040 and maybe like a couple bucks. So profit of $1,040. This was really fun. Just having the variety of games to move around in and play some no limit and play some PLO and some bomb pots, of course, throughout the day and throughout the night. Really cool to get that variety in there, and so many like really nice, really fun people that are like really excited to just play poker. You know, being around those kinds of people that are just happy to be there always makes for a fun evening, fun day, fun night of poker. I'm gonna go over towards the bar here at Texas Card House, Houston, and grab a beer or 2. I have gone this entire time without having a single beverage here in this meetup game, which is possibly a record. But let's go switch that up right now.